Call this board meeting to order. Welcome to all the visitors. Thanks for attending the board meeting. Additions or changes to the agenda?
Yeah, there's 3 additions I'd like to make. One is in regard to activity bus drivers and the pay there. The other is for the resolution for the capital outlay mill levy. And then the third is a discussion of administrator's cell phone.
Mr. President, I move the agenda be approved as amended.
Been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as noted. Discussion? All in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign. 7-0. Consent agenda. You have the minutes from the 2 meetings, August 6th and August 21st, as well as the financial statements and warrants. The bills were actually sent out for you. These are additional ones that additional ones that were sent earlier.
You have an activity fund, activity account.
There's a charge on there for Willinger Lawn Service to weed the bus lot. Not that I'm against putting some business out, but is that, are guys too busy to do that?
I don't know. I don't know the answer. I can find out and get back with you. Do you know, Julian?
I would, based on the schedules and what the projects they've been trying to complete this summer, I would say they were too busy to get out there and get it done.
Mr. President, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign. 7-0. Patron comments. Any patron wishing to make comments? There won't be opportunities later on. This is your time to speak. Need want to speak? Move on to the first item of business. Our first item is food service.
I asked Sandra to come in and present on some of the changes that we've had in our food service. There's been lots in the news about that, so I thought there might be some questions on some of those things. So I'll turn the floor over to her.
I want to thank Mr. Meyer for inviting me to speak. I haven't spoken to the board in a lot of years. I just want to talk to you guys about the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act. It's been implemented this year. It started in 2010. Hopefully to be completed by the year 2022. Pretty interesting. A lot of changes. I just want to talk about some of those changes tonight. The biggest changes for all school districts this year that has to be implemented is that all students are required to take a half a cup of fruit or vegetable every day for lunch. And the changes affect only this year for lunch unless we want to try to get the 6-cent incentive. I wasn't aware of this until today, so I was reading more information about it. In order to get the 6-cent incentive, we also have to move towards the Healthy Hunger Act in breakfast as well. So I have moved towards it in lunch. I didn't know that I needed to move towards it in breakfast. That is not with the information they gave us when I went to the meeting in Dodge City. when I get everything completed for lunch, then I'm going to start on breakfast. It requires a great deal more paperwork than what we've had in the past, so I'm working on getting that completed. And the vegetables now and the fruit are two different components. They used to all be one component, now they're two. And the vegetables, this is the biggest thing, is the vegetables now are categorized by dark greens, red, orange, and beans, and starchy other. And that means that we have to serve a certain amount of those each week to our children. It's supposed to be healthier for them. One of the things I know that they don't like already is the sweet potatoes. Instead of the regular French fries, we now have to serve sweet potato fries or sweet potato puffs. And I'm going with the state menus to try to move towards all of this. And as much, they have a cycle, and that's what you'll see on the menu is their cycle, with a little bit of improvising on our main dish items, because some of those items in our district aren't feasible to make. And so that's what, I mean, the components will be the same, it just won't be their same offering. And the half a cup of beans has to be offered now, as before we never really ever offered beans that much. I don't know if the coaches will appreciate me. I don't have a lot of choice. I was told once before by some members of the board not to serve those on the game day, but at this point, I don't have a choice. I have to serve them at some point during the week. So, and another thing is that we're supposed to, and we are, offering 1 cup of fruit for our older students, our 9th through 12th grade students, and 3/4 of a cup vegetables for K through 8, and then 1 cup for 9 through 12. The meat alternate, which could be cheese, yogurt, or peanut butter. We do have a student in our district that is allergic to peanut butter, and so I try the best that I can not to even have that around, because I don't want to make this child sick. Previously, on the meat items, there was no limit as to what we could serve. So if I decided I wanted to serve them 14 ounces of meat a week, which wasn't unusual, that was common, that's what we were doing with the cheese and taco meat and stuff. Now I can only serve them 10 ounces of meat a week. You know, there's been a lot of controversy in the media about how much meat they're getting. We've had parents call. There's maximums on what we can serve. And the grain bread is the same way. It used to always be they wanted you to enhance the grain bread, give them more grain breads. Now we have to limit how much grain bread we can give them a week. So I know when we moved away from having seconds, one of our things was on the entree was to let them have more grain breads and more fruits and vegetables, of course, of the healthier vegetables. We're not going to be able to allow them to have more bread. One of my things is a lot of the kids, let's see if he's going to agree with this, we talked about this last week, the ones that come back for seconds are not the ones that necessarily need it. Those are the ones that we're seeing that come back. So, I don't have the decision to make it that we're not going to have seconds, but I would highly recommend that we don't, except for the older kids from 7 through 12. At the end of the day, whenever we're done serving. So the main dish may not be as big as it used to be, but there are lots more fruits and vegetables in bigger amounts, which is really hard for our little kids to handle. Because you feed a half a cup of pineapple to a little bitty kindergartner, that's a lot of food on there, for them, plus the entree and stuff. So I've heard through the media that it's not enough food, that there isn't enough quality or quantity of food. I think that there is. Honestly, I think there's more food than what there was before. I think that, and, I mean, our kids have been pretty good about it, except for the sweet potato thing, they just weren't really like that, but I have to serve so much red and orange a week, and, you know, there's not very many choices, so. Are there any questions I can answer? I'll try to. If I don't know the answer, I'll sure find
You
out
said
for
there
you.
was certain things that you just couldn't make or feasibly do. What is that?
Well, one of them is stromboli. I changed the stromboli to the pizza that we used and that we have always used here. So that allows them to have pizza one more time through that 6-week cycle instead of just once every 6 weeks. And the other thing that I changed was, and this is a USDA, or a Kansas, I should say. It's not a USDA recipe, it's a Kansas recipe. The other one is, a stromboli is, I don't know, if you don't know what it is, I'll tell you what it is. It's bread dough on the bottom, and like turkey and cheese in the middle, and then bread dough, your homemade bread dough again on the top. And you pinch it, and you seal it, and you bake it. It's kind of like a Hot Pocket. I don't know how early we would have to come to make that. I don't know how well they would eat that. But the serving is the same as having a cheese pizza, pepperoni pizza, whatever type of pizza. Because there'll be 2 meats in there, as well as there is in the stromboli, and there's 2 servings of grain bread in pizza, as well as there is in stromboli. I don't, if you want me to try to make it, we can try.
I was just wondering.
Okay. And then the other thing, and when I started doing this 16 years ago, they said, do not fix chicken from a raw state in schools. But this is one of their new things. They want us to fix a raw chicken leg, and you sprinkle it with seasoning, and you bake it in the oven. I don't think our kids would eat it without breading on it. They might. I don't really think I want to mess with raw chicken because of the safety factor. So on that day, I'm going to have the sweet and sour chicken that we've always had here. It's a child nutrition labeled product. Those were the only 2 days that I changed.
You talked about the breakfast. What are the changes that you foresee in your breakfast?
I don't know, honestly. The last page that I gave you, those would be the new requirements. I didn't really look much at it.
I had some parent concerns about so much carbohydrates served first thing in the morning, and so I was just wondering what kind of changes you were looking at instead of having all that carbohydrate.
I don't think that that is one of the changes. I think that what the changes are is to not have, a few years ago, they made us change from having juice every day to having something that had more fiber in it. So that's why we used to serve it on Wednesdays. I've changed it up for this year a little bit because of the other menu cycle. But is not to have the hash brown. We wouldn't have hash brown anymore, and I know we can, and we're not serving them anymore as of now even. No, we can't serve super donuts because the hidden thing that's in the super donut is juice. You can't serve products that are deceiving, like, because that
What's a
has.
super donut? Yes.
It's just a donut that's fortified with juice. So you can't. It's like a deceiving product because it's juice packed, and that's how part of the reason why it meets the requirement. So, I know that those are some of the things. I don't know exactly what all of them are,
How about, I was just wondering about eggs. Can you not serve eggs, or you don't choose not to because you don't?
They recommended it before not to serve them from a raw state. It is really hard to get them in a dry state anymore.
We can't get the, oh my gosh, it's a Conover product, my daughter, what's the name of those egg beaters?
Yes, and we have served those before.
Do they go over pretty well?
Well, we've only used them whenever we serve green eggs and ham. The thing that you kind of want to be careful with breakfast is we lose money on breakfast every day. It's an expensive meal to serve because of all the things that we're serving. If you give them a lot of meat choices, it's gonna cost us more money.
Yeah, well, eggs shouldn't be
Eggs are a
expensive.
dime a
You
piece.
know, they're,
I don't know how much they are, because we don't really use them that much, so. That's
One of the
thing
things
I
I
have to
read is
find out.
that meat is actually prohibited at the breakfast. Is that true?
No. Meat's not prohibited.
Or are you limited in the number of meat servings you can have in a week, so it's effectively prohibited because if you're providing meat during lunch, you hit your limit so that you can't
And I mean,
have
the
it?
breakfast and the lunch would be separate. So we don't, we, honestly, we serve a lot of kids breakfast. Our breakfast counts have been like 120 a day. The lunch count, the highest I think it's been is 235 since school started, so. I mean, it's a good value, but like I said, I know that we lose money on it.
Mrs. Davis, do most of the kids clean their trays? Is there anyone there that suggests they eat so much before dumping their tray?
Only in the lower grades. I don't know, do you suggest to them in the fifth and sixth grade?
I walk around and encourage kids, now's your time to eat, now's not the time to visit, make sure you're eating until you're full, those kinds of things. I don't pull a complete mom on them and say, you're not getting up till you clean your plate. No, but we do talk about it and what's on their plate and what they need to eat until they're full. And we did work with our kindergartners this year. They were so excited at all the fruit choices, they were taking much more than they
And
could
we've
eat.
told them that they can only, to try to get them not to take so much. And if they want to, they can come back and get some more fruit, on the fruits, because, there's 5 little holes on their tray and they want to fill them all, so.
Remember Mr. Matthews and us in elementary would walk around and not let you get up until you'd satisfied what he thought was enough.
I can only, and legally, we can only put it on their tray. We can't make them eat it. We can encourage them, but we can't really say specifically. I know we used to tell them if they came back and got seconds, we would make them finish that. I don't know that we were doing the child justice by doing that either, but, so much of this stuff, our hands are kind of tied on how much we give them. It's going to cost us a lot more money because of how much we have to give them and how much is going in the trash.
Are the younger kids required to eat lunch at school? I mean, can they bring a lunch from home?
Yes, they can bring a lunch from home. That's interesting that you asked me that. In some media thing, someone told me, actually it was a question that had happened at Stafford School District. They wanted to know, there was a parent that their child went over there. They asked me if they could legally bring their own lunch to school. For heaven's yes, you can bring your own lunch to school. I don't know why. I don't know what their reasoning is for it. But yes, they
Media
can.
doesn't get everything right all the time.
That's exactly right. And that's one thing that I told Mr. Meyer I was a little upset about. And the person that I have heard give bad publicity to the new program is a person that used to work for the state. And now she's the food service director in Wichita Public Schools. And that really upsets me. She shouldn't do that. Anything else?
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in. Thank you.
Any more questions? You guys know where to find me.
Stop off the once.
Okay.
We're on to item 2, recommended policy updates.
Well, this is the second read of these policies. There was a couple of highlights in your packet, removing some of that wording. It's not for a specific program, it's just as a condition of employment in the district. So remove those, that wording. It says it's for a specific program, on that drug-free workplace. There's a note on here on online learning opportunities. This just sets the expectation that online credits as far as what we grant credit for need to be approved, just like there would be if we have a transfer student come in. You know, we approve the student's transcript. So it just specifies those things, and the highlighted parts there would just be having the administration approve those things. We wouldn't have to come to the board every time a student is taking an online course and wants it approved to go on the transcript. And then the dates, if they didn't want to take an online class that's separate from our curriculum. Set the date. We thought the dates on there were a little early. We'd be willing to work with kids on that, but as long as we have that decision made before the first day of school. So that's those changes there. The truancy stuff is just updated information. There was a change in the law where we have to have a meeting with the student if they want to drop out, if they're between the ages of 16 and 18, and a meeting with the parent. The law change says we have to inform them of alternative options.
Such as military?
Online school, credit recovery, the Learning Center in Stafford, another way to get a diploma or a GED. And then this information goes along with that. It's typical every year. It's just updated information for the employment rates and the earnings. That's what students see in the meeting, and that's the consent form. This drug-free schools part here, where it says insert local sanctions, Mr. Berg and I talked about this. We had discussed it at our last meeting about changing the current sanctions to give us a little more flexibility, so it would read this, just listing the possible sanctions rather than saying the first offense is a short-term suspension. It may be a more severe offense than that. This gives us that flexibility. Any questions on the policies there?
I entertain a motion to approve the policy as presented.
Mr. President, I move we accept the policy updates as presented.
Second.
Been moved and second to approve the policy updates as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign, 7-0. Board goals.
The copy of the board goals is not in your packet, so you have a hard copy on your station there. Our 5 goals were improve technology. This is again from our special meeting. Ensure the students have sufficient opportunities for advanced course options. Improve and enhance the facilities and the grounds. Ensure that all students are prepared for career or post-secondary education, and provide an opportunity for all students to attend preschool. This is laid out with objectives under each goal. Goal 1 on improved technology, we need that infrastructure to support what we need. And that's wireless access and our internet capabilities and our speed there. Mr. Smith was already on top of that. So we're in the process. The timeline there is November 1. I expect we'll have that sooner than that. And then address immediate technology needs. That's getting our laptops updated and new ones in place as we need them. Making sure we have adequate technology resources in each building. We're looking at adding some iPads to each building. I don't think throwing money at an initiative is the way to do things, but getting started, getting the ball rolling is. I think the iPads will really change the way we do things. Getting our foot in the door with that is a big step. And then objective 3 is training people to use the tools. We can't just throw it out there and call it good there. On the advanced course options, a big part of this is just determining what we need. What do students want? So surveying kids and parents in the community on what needs to be available, what do we really want and need. and then having that knowledge, exploring options available with our area colleges, and maybe some non-traditional opportunities with online courses. There's some logistics to work out there, but it's finding answers is a lot of this stuff. Stop me anytime if you need me to go over something in more detail. Improve and enhance facilities and grounds. We do need a capital improvement plan. We're starting with that on the next agenda item, at least in a brief form. But using a district advisory team to create a long-term capital improvement plan. So we can plan financially for those things that we need. And Objective 2, enhance the grounds and improve the overall look of the facilities. We may look at coordinating a community work day. We need to understand what the public perception is. I think we all know sometimes, but having that in a formal survey or something like that would be helpful. And then finding resources, grants, any other ways to pay for those things. And then looking at career and post-secondary education. The first objective will be requiring that each student in high school has a career plan. It's headed that way. Mr. Bergen and Lisa Cornwell have kind of been working on some of that stuff already. Whether we use a personal plan of study that the state has outlined for us, or we create our own, is kind of up to us. And we want to do that. The possibility of additional assessments within ACT maybe, and plan and explore tests to ensure that students are ready for college and career. And expanding vocational opportunities. We're going to change that to career and technical education, just a wording change instead of vocational. That's what Merlin brought up. We need to be using that wording, which we should be. But expanding our pathway offerings, if we can. And Mr. Bergen is going to talk about the Senate bill that relates to the career and technical education here in his report, but you've heard about the $1,000 stipend schools can get. Maybe you've heard that. He's going to discuss that a little more, but that's all part of that. It's in the vocational opportunities of career and technical education. And then looking at preschool, again on that is just determining what we need. What does our community want, and what it would be the facility needs that go along with that, that could make that happen, which is the feasibility of that. Finding a way to pay for it, and finding a place to do it if we move that direction. And then I just threw in some ongoing goals. We kind of talked in the meeting that, what about, Chad had mentioned, what about increasing student enrollment. And some of those things are just ongoing that we want to do all the time, improving student achievement, making sure our financial position is sound, things like the Common Core standards. So I threw in a few examples here of ongoing goals that we continue to address but aren't explicitly stated here. So questions or comments about the goals?
Very well put together. After our meeting.
Well, thank you all for putting in all that time. It's a long meeting for sure.
Just one comment. I feel we need to have these goals in front of us at the end in a few months.
Okay.
Just to review them again and try to stay on top of them. Right. We're not expecting you to move mountains, but we just need to keep them in front of us.
Maybe just include them in the packet once a month.
Either that, or like every month, address one of the specific goals. You know, like goal, this is goal 1.
Get a little more detailed.
I'll tell you what, I'll get it printed off and put it on the wall too. Have them very accessible. Did I miss anything? Sound like what we intended from the meeting? I left these here, but with our dots and everything. It's kind of hard to read from where you're at.
I would say entertain a motion to approve the board goals as put in draft form here.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the goals as written.
Second the motion.
Moved and seconded to approve the board goals as put in draft form here after calling our meeting. Any further discussion? All in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign, 7-0. All right, capital outlay purchases.
This is far from being a capital improvement plan, but I did want to show you that these are the things that we did, not very specific. Last year, list out the items. Again, we had some big purchases last year. And then below that is, I'm sorry.
No, we're good.
And then historical expenditures from that capital outlay fund, and then some tentative things that I know we're going to need to look at. Going along with the board goals, you'll see a big one there for technology improvements. I think it would be important for this group to be committed to that money-wise, and Carolyn kind of mentioned that to me at one point. The Suburban we've already purchased, the carpet is done. We will need some additional carpet. The door system upgrades are in progress. The technology improvements, again, would be part of this goal plan. I'm going to show you some information on our vehicles here in a little bit, but a van purchase would be on the agenda, and then some other things as needed. My goal is to not decrease our cash balance at all in that capital outlay fund, waiting on some information from the auditor, so that's very tentative now to finalize what we will have left. There were some expenditure changes there from the auditor that I need to finalize. So, any questions or comments on what's there? Again, the plan would be to have a long-term and short-term capital improvement plan, so we can see the whole picture there.
Any discussion?
That technology improvement, how much will that?
We're looking at 2 iPad carts, which would be about 25 in each cart, so 1 cart for each building. And then purchasing new on some of our laptops and updating others, and then getting wireless throughout the district.
So when you say cart, it's a set of iPads?
It's a set of iPads that go on a charging station that we can take where we need to go.
I had just suggested that this might be something that, I knew that schools were talking about capital outlay purchases, but just by way of background, I was at a PDC meeting when we were planning the upcoming training, and I think there was some question as to what is going to happen with our technology improvements and coordinating the timing of that with what the planned development days are. I think there was just, I didn't read it as resistance at all. In fact, I think they're very happy that technology is coming, but just wanting to know that the technology is going to be here if we spend the time training for it, because there's lots of other things that we could be making their time useful for in those limited development days. So if we kind of put some definition to what that time frame is and exactly what kinds of things are going to be available for the teachers to use. Anyway, so that just, you mentioned that, communicated that we might consider that here, and that's why.
Good. Thank you for bringing us up to date on that. Next item, schools for fair funding.
The Schools for Fair Funding Group, they're the ones, we're a member of their group, and they've had the lawsuit with the the Gannon versus the state of Kansas, and they've been fighting that. That is to determine what suitable funding is and how they should, how the court should go about determining how that obligation is met. There should be a ruling in the next 60 days or so, 60 to 90 days. My question to you is this something that the board wants to continue with? Our share of that is about $2,000 per year, and I just wanted some direction from you if that's something we want to continue with, or you have an opinion either way.
My question is it going anywhere, and is it doing any good?
It's going to pay the legal services. Could they get along with, okay without our $2,000? I'm sure they could.
And we'll be refunded it, whatever the results of the, I mean, we'll be included in the settlement if there is a settlement, whether we are involved in this or not. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not to benefit just the member schools.
How long has it been going on? How long have we been doing it?
I don't,
It's been about a year, hasn't it?
What was last year? No, it's been last year.
Probably 3 years anyway.
yeah, I can't answer that.
Have there been some schools that have dropped out of this?
I don't know that either.
So far?
I was never in favor of it to start with.
It looks like it's a mixed amount. I mean, some of them are big schools, some of them are small schools.
But there's not very many. Or it didn't seem like it to me. I don't know how many it was on there.
Is it 2,000 per year, or what are we talking?
Yeah.
It's not a great deal of money, but I was just never in favor of suing. Because you win, you're gonna take it away again, and you start over.
Well, those of you that were here, what was the thought process for getting in it?
Were we in it the first one?
Very,
The
Come
one?
on, Toy.
No. No.
this is what I want to get involved with, this idea that more schools that were on board to go with the lawsuit that moderate spoke at the state level.
Power in numbers?
Power numbers. And
Plus they were defunding. It was, it just felt like a nonstop roller coaster going down, but
Yeah, to go back to what
to try and prove
the
the
number was that they started from.
And since it's gone, we have new governor and his staff, coalition legislative. Ultra conservative. And I don't know that it'll change anything.
I read the
I
situation.
haven't read enough on it to really know what that is.
How I read the situation at the time is if, pragmatically speaking, suing is probably going to be more likely to get more money to our school district than lobbying. That's how I processed it anyway. The lawsuit was probably, if you followed what happened in Montoy, that was the hammer that the legislature responded to in actually disseminating a higher level of funding to schools. So it was just, I think, that idea of if we really feel like that our crunch is that hard, that we need more funding, that this is probably the most pragmatic way. Now, whether our participation in that lawsuit really makes a difference one way or the other, but, you know, whether they're gonna continue to sue, I would say regardless, they're gonna appeal probably. It's supposed to be within 60 days that they get the verdict, but I listened to a news program this weekend that talked about how both sides of attorneys are already probably all along have been preparing for the appeal.
Yeah.
And the question is going to become whether because it's going to go directly to, it's going to bypass the Court of Appeals and go directly to the state Supreme Court. And the question is going to be whether the legislature allows the state Supreme Court to continue having the jurisdiction to force their hand in this way. So we could probably see legislation that would limit the Supreme Court's ability to act on this type of issue. I don't know, it's bigger than our $2,000.
If we win, we'll end up losing, because they'll change the law. That's my opinion.
I think we could spend that 2,000 somewhere else. So,
I think it's tight as the budget has got. It's gonna be, I like to support our initial thing, but money's gotten tight enough that I don't see that we can continue working over this money. Know the unknown. There could be laws that just limit us anyway.
I'd rather spend the 2,000 on the next item than on the lawsuit.
It could drag on for years.
That's true.
And there, another 2,000, another 2,000.
We don't need action on this at all, do we? I give you, everybody spoke their piece. You need direction.
Okay.
All right, added agenda items.
On our activity bus driver pay, Irvine had mentioned to me that she and Dr. Kinwood had talked about changing this initially, and I needed to gather the information for myself. But here's some examples of how we pay. Just an example event for, let's say, Halstead volleyball, based on how far is it, how long are you driving, and how long is that person sitting at the event. So each, for Stafford, St. John, and Maxville, just as a couple of example districts, what the total pay would be. And if you divide that up for an average hourly rate, what that ends up being. And that total pay is the actual pay rate. Stafford pays a flat $10 per hour. We pay the driver's rate, which I figured on $12. Some are more than that, some are less than that. Plus $7.25 an hour for idle time. So it's $12 driving time, $7.25 idle time. And then Maxville pays 45 cents a mile, plus $7.25 for every hour that they're working. Which you can see is quite a bit of difference there. In all cases where our pay is lower. My recommendation would be to bump that to $10 per hour, just flat rate. Easier to figure, easier to budget for, and pays a little bit more. It's not gonna, we're not gonna get folks beating down the door to do it now because we do this, but every little bit helps.
If you were to apply that, if there's any way to apply it to last year's activities, what's the total cost difference from 1 year?
Just rough estimates, it's gonna be about $1,000 difference, figuring on like 3 activities a week. Average of about $10 an event different.
to me, having a quality bus driver is pretty important. My question is $10 enough to attract a quality driver?
Maybe not. Again, this isn't going to change the game on the whole situation. It will help a little bit. So to answer your question, I don't know. It's what I feel comfortable recommending with a budget situation. I think we can swing that little bit of extra.
So we're changing from what stuff there to just a flat $10 an hour.
That would be my recommendation.
When's their start time and begin, and end time? Is it when they get out of their vehicle and approach the bus?
Yeah,
And when they fill out the paperwork?
yeah.
Do you know what the requirements are to be an activity driver? I know you have to have a CDL,
And
you have to have passenger bus endorsement, and then what other
I
requirements?
take a defensive driving, is that once a year?
Mhm.
And,
CPR.
Do we pay for those things?
Have a CDL.
Have a-
I didn't hear the
Is there a
question.
separate physical required?
As part of your CDL license, yes, there is. You have to go every 2 years.
I'm not sure if it's every year or every other year.
CDL renewable every year,
Oh, no, that's
No.
every 4 years.
every 4 years?
Or 1 year.
Medical certificate is every 2.
If we have a teacher or coach drive, this applies to them also, correct?
Yeah, we would pay the driving time, and then, if the coach is at the game, then we would get the extra, for being at the game, they're already paid to do that job, but, yeah, we'd pay for the extra drive time. We do have a one-time $250 stipend, I believe is what it is, if a teacher or coach gets the CDL. It's just a one-time.
Anyone to be penalized,
Right.
make less,
Right.
for providing the service the current do. So if they're being paid $12 drive time, it'd be a $2 decrease actually.
Oh, what they're making now? Oh, I see what you're saying. If somebody is doing that now, do we have anybody doing that now?
No, I do not. At least not that I'm aware of. Marla schedules the buses, so she would be more familiar with that than
Yeah.
I, but I am not aware of any coaches at this time.
That's a good point.
Because that would actually be a better situation.
I don't understand what you're saying.
Okay, right now, drivers being paid $12 an hour to drive, and then $7.25.
$10 an hour.
No, 12.
12.
Yeah.
All right, so-
The
oh, okay,
average
okay,
driver
okay.
for us.
Sway.
Okay, I see.
So-
Okay.
So if we had a coach making $12 an hour to drive, and we change that to 10.
Maybe we could pay the coaches 12 and we would drive.
Maybe, or add some time there, if you're not paying for the idle time, some extra time. Need to think on that.
I don't mean to complicate it, but
Sure.
it matters.
Well,
It does.
If the coach is driving, who gets the bus and gets it there for the kids? Yeah, get it ready. Who does that?
Is the bus ready to go?
Yeah.
The coach would.
Coach
He would be the bus driver, yeah.
So are they getting out of school earlier then?
We'd have to, yeah.
Than they would have otherwise?
Is this only for buses, not suburbans?
Correct.
Do you pay people that drive Suburbans, or is
No,
that's
no.
just part of what they're? Yeah.
This would be a larger bus situation where you're required to have a CDL.
Correct.
What's a dollar increase or $2 or $12 flat fee? Is it 10? What's a dollar
Oh, I haven't figured that. You mean if we went 11 or 12 instead of 10? I'd have to put the pencil to paper for that and figure the hours.
I would be in favor of paying more to try to attract, quality athletic people, athletic drivers.
Drivers, period.
Yeah. I think it's a need.
Could we, you get some information on that, just a little more of a, I know you said hours before you changed there, but
Yeah.
I'd like to know how many driving hours approximately. I know if there's any way to look back. Does that sound fair to the rest of you? I'm with Tom. I'm thinking that, to ask someone to give up, a lot of times they're leaving at a 3:30, and you ask someone to stop their other hourly job to do this hourly job, yeah, they're getting paid for it, but that's,
Plus, sometimes the weather conditions, and they're in charge of all the students.
I
There's a
just
lot
didn't
of-
have a quality driver. And if we know it's only gonna be another $600-700, $800, I don't know. Goes long ways,
Yeah.
but someone wants action on it tonight.
Well, if you throw $2 on it, $10 he's talking about, and he says the other's gonna be $1,000. $2,000.
No, because it's based on hours. Right now, we're kind of based on, two different hourly rates. So it depends on the drive time. If it's a short trip, the $12 is less. So I would
Is that gonna take
crunch
much
some
work?
numbers a little
We
bit.
have to take much work to do that.
No. No, it's pretty easy to come up with.
Is that fair for the rest of the week and month? Or
That was last street.
No. Bus driver pay, we'll move on to capital outlay resolution.
This is your resolution. We discussed this in our budget meeting and discussed a little bit at the last regular meeting. This is the resolution that we must pass in order to levy a tax for the capital outlay fund. The most you can go is 5 years. The most you can go is 8 mills. Again, this is just establishing the maximum mill levy that we're allowed to levy in the budget. The actual mill levy is set during the budget each year in August. So if we pass this resolution at 8 mills, it doesn't mean we're maxing the tax rate out for a capital outlay fund. This means we're giving ourselves that authority. A few things play into that. Consider our mill levy is about 2.5 mils lower this year than it was last year. Also, our bond and interest fund has a levy this year of 5 mils. It's been 5 to 7 over the past several years. That will be gone next year. So even if we would, for instance, next year in our budget, utilize that full 8 mils, our mill levy would still be lower, if all other things being the same. So this is the mill levy that we use to, we tweak this number to try to keep the overall mill levy flat. Also, one of our goals we're looking at, for technology and improving our grounds, having extra revenue there, or at least the ability to generate that revenue would be very helpful.
Does that make sense?
I think it is very important that the public understand that this is not the board maxing out the mill levy. You are the check to make sure that the actual mill levy is what it ought to be and is not out of hand. And that happens when we have the budget hearing and establish the budget. So.
There's no
objections, I need to read this out loud. So that it can be published for 2 weeks, so pardon me as I read it. Be it resolved that the above named school board shall be authorized to make an annual tax levy for a period not to exceed 5 years in amount not to exceed 8 mills upon taxable tangible property in the school district for the purpose of acquisition, construction, reconstruction, repair, remodeling, additions to, furnishing, and equipping of buildings necessary for school district purposes, including housing and boarding pupils enrolled in the area vocational school operated under the board, architectural expenses incidental thereto, the acquisition of building sites, the undertaking of maintenance and asbestos control projects, the acquisition of school buses, and the acquisition of other equipment for the purpose of paying a portion of the principal and interest on bonds issued by cities under the authority of KSA 12-1774 and the amendments thereto, for the financing of redevelopment projects upon property located within the school district. The tax levy authorized by this resolution may be made unless a petition in opposition to do the same signed by not less than 10% of the qualified electors of the school district is filed within the county with the county election officer of the home county of the school district within 40 days after the last publication of this resolution. In the event of a petition is filed, the county election officer shall submit the question of whether the tax levy shall be authorized to the electors in the school district at an election called for the purpose or at the next general election as specified by the Board of Education of the above school district. Okay, we need to entertain a motion to approve the resolution as read. Is that correct?
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the capital outlay resolution to authorize a maximum of 8 mills for 5 years.
Second. Then moved and second to approve the capital outlay resolution to authorize a maximum of 8 mills for 5 years. Is there any further discussion? I want to emphasize it's important for you to talk to your constituents, not necessarily bring them up, but someone asked you, just what Josh has talked about, to keep our mill levy more flat-lined. Decline, we have declined it through the years, but it's important that we just don't have a big spike up or down, because then it's hard to pass resolutions later on to raise money. But if we keep it flat-lined, it's much easier to operate a school district. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign. 7-0. Okay, next item is administrator cell phones.
You've seen the notes. I expect these two folks to carry their cell phone and answer it when I call. They use their personal cell phones now. With our government plan through Verizon, we can get that at a much cheaper rate than what you can for a personal plan. So I would like to, with consensus of the board, have permission to add them to our lines. At next month's meeting, I don't want to try to make a decision in a hurry on this, but pursue the possibility of paying for part of that. With the E-rate through the federal government, we can get a reduction of, our reduction is about 75%. So for our internet service, our telecommunications, cell phones is included in that. The $50 a month becomes $12.50 a month. So at least next year, we can't do that until next school year. We have to apply and bid that out and everything. There's a process, but we should be able to get 3 cell phone lines for cheaper than what we're paying for 1 right now. So again, I'm not asking you to decide on whether we pay for that now, but if they would like to move their cell phone over to the district plan, that would save them money. Even if it is, they're on our plan, but they have to reimburse the district or reimburse part of that. To give you an idea, Maxville does nothing. their administrators. Stafford pays $420 per year as a stipend to each administrator for their personal cell phone. And we will pay less than that for our actual plan, for the full plan next year with a E-rate discount. So, does anybody have any objections to moving their cell phone lines to the government plan?
If it's okay with them, if it's not inconvenient. I mean, I would think.
Do they have to change servers?
It would become, their number would, if they move their personal number over, it would become the school district's number. And purchase a phone, it would be the school district's phone. And, the tax treatment of that is incidental, considered incidental benefit. If they can use it for their private line as well, it's not a taxable benefit.
Me, yeah, no, I don't have cell phone service at my home, but that's not usually when I'm needed, so. But yeah, no, if you want to get lost and come out to my house.
So then next month I would be asking you to consider, I have a recommendation for you, what I would recommend paying.
All right. No further discussion on that. We'll move on to item D, communications. And board member activities. Stan?
Saw a good volleyball game Saturday. Coach?
Yes, it was a good game.
That third one was very good.
That was my favorite.
Yeah. That's it.
That was pretty sweet.
Thank you, Stan. Carolyn?
PDC meeting and just already hit on that a little bit, the idea of some congruency between board action and what's planned there. That's the main thing. You have another meeting coming up this week.
I attended a junior high volleyball and helped with the clock, but looking forward to all the different seasons of activities, kind of trying to make more money. I don't have to stay at home all the time, so.
I don't know.
I think I reported on this especially. Yeah, there's nothing going on there. Okay, go to elementary principal.
Okay, and my report was on page 49 in your big packet. For teaching and learning, our teachers are collecting data and beginning to group our elementary students for the focused intervention work that we have been training on and preparing to do for our multi-tiered system of support as we're implementing in the elementary school. Ask a teacher about it if you get a chance. I think you'd be interested in what they have to say about the work that they're putting into MTSS. Teachers were updated on using Lexia and Reading Plus. These are two programs that we're using to supplement our core instruction in English language arts. We kind of partner with the co-op on these programs, and they were some of the bigger expenditures that came through. They are research-based programming that, again, will supplement our core instruction. Programming that is designed to fit individual needs of students. So we're trying to provide as much individualist instruction as we can. PE swimming unit was a success again. Of course, the children really enjoyed that, and we're very appreciative to the city and to the staff at our swimming pool for helping us make this possible for our students. Ms. Friesen does a good deal of planning and preparation, and it's wonderful to see our kids out there swimming. PE bike unit is coming up the week of September 24th, and please contact Ms. Friesen if you would like to help in any way. She will find a place for you to volunteer. And again, we appreciate the work that the city does and the police department does to help us with that unit, as well as all the parent volunteers. I had 7 teachers apply for the $100 classroom grants that were made available through South Central Community Foundation. These are just little grants for $100 for different kinds of classroom things. I was very pleased to have 7 people fill those out and turn them in, and we'll find out later in October who got those grants. So hopefully I'm able to report that quite a few teachers brought in that $100 to use in their classroom. Friday of last week, Joe Coles was here and worked with our middle school students and staff during the morning of August 31st on leadership and team building. I was in attendance during the portion of the morning that was for the students, and he did an excellent job. And I went through today and talked with all the 5th grade and 6th grade students about what they learned and the positive changes that they're committed to making this year. And I thought it was a good use of time for our students and staff on Friday. During the time when just the staff was working with Mr. Coles, Amy Collins and Glenn Taylor and some parent volunteers over at Stafford County Research and Extension also helped do some team building and leadership skills with our students. So I'm very appreciative of their help, and of course the parent volunteers that come in and help make things like that possible. On the administrative side, reminder, open house is September 10th, 7 p.m. We'd love to have everybody there. We're going to do it a little bit differently this year than we did last year, but that's just your teaser. You got to come and see what's different. So, K-6 enrollment right now is at 152, and this number has fluctuated quite a bit since the beginning of school. I anticipate this continuing. We have several families that are, I think, being very mobile right now, and are here and there and here and there and here and there. So we're prepared for those students when they're here, so we can provide for them in the very best way possible. But those are my numbers right now. And our pre-K enrollment right now is at 27. Mrs. Allen is anticipating that maybe even going up a little bit more. So she is really above capacity. Our site council PTO organizational meeting was this evening at 6 p.m. And I had a lot more people sign up than showed up this evening, so I'm going to continue to work on getting that organization really functioning for us, working for its purpose to support students, support staff, and advise the Board of Education. Tomorrow I will be in Wichita going to an MTSS symposium offered through KSDE, and on September 10th during the day I'll be at a Harris Computer Users Group conference. And if you remember, this is the program we've used to keep track of student information. It's the program we use to upload information to the state and things like that. So we'll be updated on that program. Any questions for me?
Yes. On enrollment for 712, you can see the total 152. I believe last year's this time we were at 157. You can see I have 58 7th and 8th graders and 94 high school. Last year on September 20th we turned in 99 high school students. So between now and 2 weeks from tomorrow, we'll do enrollment. If we stay the same, we'd be turning in 94 for classification, and then of course 10, 11, 12 would be used for football classification for whether you're 8 or not, 8, 9 or not. CPL, sorry, I'm not really sure. I'm not sure what I meant by information there. Central Prairie League, we remind, Western Plains got out of our league, so we have 8 schools. Ellenwood's going to join our league in 2014-15. There may be other schools. At our last meeting last week ago, there may be some other schools that are wanting to get in. So in 2 years we might have, depends on how things go, we might have more. So that's some information there, just miscellaneous stuff, and as we go down. as we keep going, even more specifics when they become available. Like everybody knows, we have activity contests, football started, cross-country, volleyball, so things are going well. The Central Kansas Orthopedic Group, we have a trainer that comes out once a week on Tuesday mornings to look at the kids, any of our kids, particularly the ones who are out for athletics. They work at Central Kansas Orthopedic is a group that has Dr. Flesky and Hildebrand, and there's another doctor, I believe his name is Rhodes. And we've used this service for a number of years. It used to be advanced therapy, and now advanced therapy is on their own, and the doctors and the trainers come from CKOG, Central Kansas Orthopedic Group. So, and they come out, and they're also going to be, they come out once a week. They're going to provide, they'll be here, we host the high school league volleyball tournament, and so there'll be a trainer here all day for that to help any kid that needs it. They'll be here for the Midwinter Classic the whole week to help if anybody, if any student would need that, for that. So that's just a little bit of basic information about what that is.
Mike, is that a service that we pay for, or how is that funded?
We make we do a contract with them. Last year, this is the first year they've actually are going to come to events for us, like for a day or for a few days. Yeah, we pay by the, we have a base pay just for weekly visits, and then we paid $150 per event. We tried, the first thing we tried to do was get them to come to every high school home football game, so there'd be a trainer there besides the ambulance and could work with the kids and that, but it didn't work out. They couldn't hire enough people, I guess, to work out to come to our football games. So, as it turns out, you know, when I talked to Dr. Kimberly about this, he was okay with at least coming to 2 events. Yeah. So it's kind of I think it's $800, I think it's something like that. I think it's around $800 what it costs us this year. And so they come out once a week, and then that way we can get referrals to Dr. Flesky, Dr. Hildebrand, or Dr. Rhodes quickly. Parents can take them up there. Coaches can take kids up there when we need a referral if there's something wrong with a student. So I think it's a pretty good service, and it works out pretty well. Coaches seem to like it. In the previous years, they used to come out on Tuesday mornings during LS. That schedule didn't work, so now they come out on Tuesday mornings before school starts. So I'm sure the kids don't like being there sometimes a little earlier than what they were used to being there. But that's just the way it worked out.
So the process is that the kids self-identify that they feel like they have something that needs to
No,
be looked at?
they would just talk to the coaches. But the trainer comes once a week regardless. They may come in there, maybe they may not see anybody. They're just here every Tuesday morning, and the trainer comes every Tuesday morning at 7:35. If there's somebody to see, fine. If there isn't anybody to see, fine. But they're here every week, once a week, yeah. And then a coach will talk to the player, and then they'll make sure that they're there to see them every Tuesday morning. If I explain what they're here once a week, every week.
Somebody twists their ankle or something.
Right. We've had some knee
Kind of
injuries.
saves them from having to go to the doctor and listen. They've done this since Tyler.
Oh yeah, we've done it since I've been here. Yeah, we've used all, and it was different, it had different names, but it's pretty much the same thing. Yeah, we've done it for quite some time.
Well, if they see something that's really bad or something, then they refer them up there.
So that we work with them on our student insurances, with students that have insurance or don't have insurance. We work with them, fill out paperwork, get up there. We've had a couple of them that needed MRIs this year, so we basically help schedule those so they can get them up there. That's what that is. Tomorrow, going to a meeting at Topeka relative to Common Core standards, the accreditation process. There's some information on the evaluation tool for principals and teachers. So that's what I'm going to tomorrow. There is an activity account at your places, I believe.
Yes.
Schedules and classes, we just put that on there, just kind of tweaked and did some things to schedules and got some kids and things. And our schedule is not perfect. We try to make it as best we could to fit kids' needs with the staff and the people that we have. I want to mention the junior high band will be performing at the state fair. Those of you who want to do something next Monday morning, 9 o'clock, whip over to the fair and watch 53 junior high kids get with it. And see some sponsors, might be some, a whole bunch of things, but anyway, that's what's going on next Monday morning, man.
Does it pay $12 an hour?
If you're interested, maybe we'll be able to raise the pay or something. Yeah. So that's what's going on there. Senate Bill 155, which Mr. Meyer mentioned earlier. Governor Brownback, when he had some ideas about ways to do for the CTE, which we talked about, which is Career and Technical Ed, what that stands for. So they've come down, they've tried to, between Department of Ed, Kansas Board of Regents, and Department of Labor, they came up with a list. The list isn't finalized of occupations that kids could partake and participate and earn a certificate in. If you did that, then the school would be reimbursed $1,000. So at a institution, and the state would pay the tuition for that student to take that class or classes and earn that certificate. The state would reimburse the school mileage if a school vehicle was used to take that person to and from class. So that kind of is a basic right there of what Senate Bill. There's some other things, you know, but that's basically right there what Senate Bill 155 pertains to. How you could, and then in our case, how we would make that work logistically if kids were interested in something like that, whether it be Pratt, Barton County, which is who we have articulation agreement with now as part of doing it with Barton County. So how to do a program that would earn them a certificate in the occupations that are listed. And like I say, it's still in draft form, but it's pretty close to being done. I don't think it's exactly done. Is that right?
I think it's pretty much
They're
done,
close, is
but
it?
yeah, seeing how it works out for us
Yeah.
is a big question. Still pretty early in the game for us.
But yeah, that's Senate Bill. You know, if you have any questions or if you're, yes.
When does that incentive take effect? Is that this school year?
The way I understand it, it would be, yes.
We can only do it with Barton County?
No, not necessarily.
No, we just happen to, right now we have articulation agreements with Barton to do outreach and dual credit classes.
Right.
This can be done with other colleges.
And it's the certificate or the credential that's when you take an assessment that says you've met these criteria. So not necessarily just the college courses, but the actual assessment that gives you the credential and paid when the student graduates.
So you said you feel like it's early in the process to know what we have that's going to be able to qualify? Is that what I heard?
Well, it's early, but how we logistically, how we get kids to and from, what classes they take, what certificate they can earn, how we're going to go about doing all of this. Yeah.
They just recently, within the past 3 weeks, probably came up with that list of what the actual occupations are.
Initially, the governor if you remember, he had a 30-mile limit on where you could go, and Barton County was actually over 30 miles initially to go to grade for the students to do anything there. But they've since taken that out, the 30-mile restriction.
So in the end, I think it'll be a good thing for our kids and have some work to do to figure out what it means for us.
Thank you, Mr. Bergen.
Yep.
On the, we've had the staff orientation. I know we've met since then, but we've talked through the purpose, passion, and pride, and some expectations, and had some good laughs, and got to know one another. I had the goal of visiting every classroom twice per week. That's a pretty ambitious goal, which is why I put it there. I maybe came close to that last week, but I didn't achieve that goal. But for at least these first few weeks, I need to be in classrooms, and I think folks are getting used to seeing me come through, and maybe not everybody, but it's good for me to get in there and see what's actually happening. I want to talk through this waiver real quick. I've sent some information about this in some emails, but to explain this a little bit, I want to go through this presentation with you so we know what it means for us. as a district. And stop me if you have any questions here. I'm going to move fairly quickly through this. The waiver, why did the state of Kansas go through this waiver? That's the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which is No Child Left Behind. That hasn't been reauthorized. You're way overdue on that. The federal government said, we'll give you some flexibility here, and that's what the state of Kansas did. They went for this waiver to see that flexibility. Trying to get away from that narrowly defined AYP and 100% proficient, to have an actual accountability system that makes sense and has meaningful results. So this graph, hopefully you all have seen this over time. This was the AYP, the adequate yearly progress, where the goal was to have every student 100% proficient in math and reading by 2014. Great goal, a noble goal, but not realistic, and lots of punitive measures within that law. So what does it mean for us? We don't have AYP this year. Let me take that back. We will have an AYP defined on last year's assessments for accrediting us for this year. We won't have 100% proficient. That goal, our Title I schools, we're getting away from the punitive, the punishment parts of the law. And then these other things with after-school tutoring and some of those things we never really had to worry about here. So you probably may not be familiar with that. So what did we agree to in the waiver? College and career ready expectations. What does that mean? Basically implement Common Core standards. For the differentiated recognition and accountability, what that is, the new performance targets. Not AYP, we're talking about a different system of how do we say we're being held accountable. And then the third part is essentially our new evaluation system that the state's going to require us to move to. So the first thing, again, we need to implement Common Core standards by next year. The assessment is being designed with the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium. Our tests will look a little different. That will come in 14-15. So we're already on board with that. The elementary is going full steam right now, and we've really started to work at the junior high and high school level for the Common Core standards. The accountability part of this, they've divided that. Instead of just saying we need to have this many kids proficient, we're looking at 4 different areas: improving achievement, growth, decreasing the gap, and then overall reducing the number of non-proficient students. So we love acronyms, so we're going to be talking about annual measurable objectives. And there'll be 4 different ones, the ones I just talked about. So instead of saying, did we make AYP or did we not, we're looking at these 4 different things to say, did we make one of those, then we're good. So you don't have to make all 4, you have to make one. If you don't make all 4, then we're in trouble. And decide what to do there. So what does all this mean? We're going to be talking about an assessment performance index. You might be used to hearing these performance categories. This would be below proficient, below meeting the standard, and then these would be above. So exemplary, exceeds standard, and meets standard. So in the past, we just looked at this red line. How many kids do we have above this red line? How many kids do we have below that red line? And we determine the percentage, and that's that. If we have kids move above that line, we see progress. If we don't have kids move above that line, we don't see progress. But every year we probably have kids move from this category to this category. Well, they weren't moving above that line, so we didn't see that as progress. So with this system, they've assigned points to each category. So the higher the category, the higher the points. And then we calculate the number of students. This is just an example. And then award points on that. And then we'll find an average. So for this example, it was a 655 average, rather than just how many kids are up here and how many are down here. So next year we can look at, if we have a few kids move in each category, we'll see this number go up. So it's rewarding performance at every level. If a kid is moving from this level to this level, which we want, maybe he's not going to get all the way up here, but we see a little bit of improvement. That's what we're after, and that's why this makes sense. It's a good system. So just as an example, this example data would show from year to year how many students were proficient. So it looks pretty flat, it doesn't look like much growth. But if we calculate that assessment performance index score, that 655 that we were looking at, you see a lot more growth. So just looking at how many kids are above or below the red line, it doesn't show much growth, but this does. Just as an example, I went back for the last 3 years and looked at our test scores for math and reading and figured out the assessment performance index for each grade level. I can send you this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but you can see some things that would be important to us is look at how is the third grade done from one year to the next. Another thing that would be important to look at would be how about this class, the same group of students, theoretically, we'll have some move in and out, how are they progressing? So this system is a lot better to track the growth, a lot easier to look at. Another objective would be to increase the growth. So we're comparing our growth to other schools in the state. So looking at how did we improve as a group, how does that measure up to what the average growth in the state was. The third objective would be decreasing the gap. A lot of times when we talk achievement gap, we're talking about how do the white kids compare to the Hispanic kids, or how do the special ed kids compare to everybody else. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the lowest 30% of our kids. We want to see those kids grow. So if we look at our lowest 30% of kids compared to the highest 30% in the state, we want to reduce that gap and get closer. So that's another method. And then the other one is just the simple method of how many kids are not proficient. We want to decrease that number. So we have a goal of decreasing that every year. We've had the goals of participation rates and graduation rates. Those won't change. Those will be what they always have been. The third principle would be our evaluation system. There's a lot of criteria here that they've designed the evaluation system on. The state is coming up with their own, and they really have it pretty much finalized, but there's some more work to do. They don't require a specific system, but they give you criteria. Your evaluation tool and system needs to meet these criteria. But the KEEP model is what the state's going to come up with, and we can use that. So we can create our own, submit it to the state, and ask if it works, or we can use the state's model. So what do we need to do? This year, student growth will have to be part of the evaluation system. That's going to be a tough thing to come up with. So the Teaching in Kansas Commission is going to come up with that idea of how do we insert student growth into how we evaluate our teachers. And it's pretty easy when we're talking about math, easier than if we're talking about art or music or something like that. So this year they will come up with that criteria. And by the end of this year, we decide whether we want to move to our own system, create our own, or use the state's. And then next year, we can pilot it, so we can move to it next year, or wait till 14-15. And again, we had discussions in the negotiation process that we would have a committee made up of some teachers and some board members to do that, so you'll be hearing more about that. We'll be asking a couple of you to volunteer for that. Quality performance accreditation, they're still deciding how do we determine the performance part. Where it used to just be AYP, now we're looking at AMOs, and we're not sure how that's going to play out. So recapping, we have to have the Common Core curriculum implemented next year. New assessments are coming, and then moving these AMOs instead of AYP, and then our new evaluation system. So any quick questions on that? I know it's a lot of information to throw at you, but we'll be talking more about it as we move along. Okay? There's information in your packet for the Kansas Association of School Boards. I'm not going to go over this, but I included it in if you want a different perspective on that information that I just presented to you. So that's those 4 pages in your packet there. The special meeting review, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of these things, but I included that in your packet as well. We went over the expectations of your superintendent, and then my expectations of the board, and the best qualities of our district, and there are problems and challenges that we have. So again, thank you for spending the time doing that. I know it was a long evening. I think we got some good out of it. The next item on that list will be a volunteer and donor recognition. Mr. Woodward is working on a plaque, and at some point I'd like to present that. We've had a couple of folks, Carl Bear and Todd Wyckoff, doing some work with the football field and mowing, and it looks great, and that's a lot of time and effort they're putting in. I'd like to recognize them especially, and I know Stan had done some work, and if we've got others doing that, I'll find that out. But at halftime of the September 14th game, I'd like to recognize them especially for that, for their efforts there. I'd like you all to be involved. If that'd be all right with you. And we have the plaque, the recognition board. Would it be ready by then, is my question? My pressure. For the 14th?
I will need to make a phone call.
Okay.
For the frame.
Okay.
The other part, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll work out the details if everybody's for that, and I'll be in touch with you. We'll figure that out. Exterior door keys. We're going to rekey the exterior door locks. Everybody's got a electronic key that needs to get in. I can't honestly tell you who in the community or in the state of Kansas has a key to our building, and it makes me very uncomfortable. So the plan is to rekey the exterior doors, and the only way in would be with the electronic cards or key fobs. And there would be a select few people that would have an exterior key that would need it. So I just wanted to give you a heads up about that. Transportation update. Included in your packet is a list of our vehicles, and it's probably kind of hard to read up there, but we've got the yellow ones. We have taken action to get rid of those, and then the green ones are ones I'm considering getting rid of. And number 10, our van. You can see our passenger vehicles here. Lots of high mileage vehicles. My goal would be to get that on a rotation where we don't have all of them with 130 to 160,000 miles on them all at once to get on a better rotation there. Also, the route information, if you notice our routes here. We've got 3 routes that run, not any different than it has been for the past few years. One of those routes that goes south only has 3 kids. What those numbers are, the first number would be the regular riders, and then the second number would be if everybody that rode the bus that could, that would be the number. So one of those routes we're taking a little bus that we don't need to. We can take another vehicle, like a van or a Suburban. The problem is we use the vans and Suburbans in the car for things during the day, and those are hard to come by. So maybe down the road we will only be running 2 route buses, and a van would be used for that 3rd route. Look at combining those routes, but the time it takes to get to all those places would be quite a bit. We tried to even up some of the hours rather than just having one driver doing everything. And the last item on the list there is KSB seminars. We have one coming up on September 13th for school finance. I sent you noted in the Friday note. If you'd like to go to that, let me know. I'd be glad to take somebody to that. There's an education summit. Mr. Bergen and I think are going to attend that. It's United School Administrators and KSB. They have some activities there. I'll make sure to put that information in the next Friday note, but if you'd like to go to that. There's one in Garden City the day before that. Also, something for your calendar would be the KSB convention on November 30th through the 2nd.
And where's that at this year?
In, in Wichita, I believe.
I thought last year. Did we go 2 years ago?
Oh, last year was Kansas State.
And I don't,
It's one of the
I know
two.
I have to let you know. And I would point out, my mentor is sitting in the audience. That's Beth Roost. She was retired principal from Plainville most recently. So she's here making sure I'm doing an okay job. Do you know where the KSB convention?
Last year was at Melville Park.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Move on to executive session and how much time?
Yeah, 20 would be good to start with.
And you building controls or
Just me to start out with.
okay, 20 minutes, 5-minute break. Josh.
Mr. President, I move the board go into executive session for purpose of discussing personnel matters for non-elected personnel. In preliminary discussion about real property, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. The board returned to the open meeting in 20 minutes following a 5-minute break.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to go into executive session for 20 minutes following a 5-minute break with the superintendent. Discussion. All in favor, right hand. Those same sign, 7-0.
Yes.
Thank you. Back in regular session. Closing business items, resignations, and contracts.
Mr. President, I make the motion that we hire Derek Sanders as assistant high school boys basketball coach.
I'll second the motion. We moved and second to hire Derek Sanders as assistant boys basketball coach. Is there any discussion? All in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign. Fails 5-2. Any other contracts?
Nope.
Future agenda items.
Evaluation stuff, and that's really about it. I don't have, besides our long-term capital improvement plan, hopefully that will be done.
Okay. I would encourage all of you to look at your calendars if you can to attend some of those school board workshops or one-day, half-day sessions. I think it'd be real good for you to attend stuff like that. Keep us apprised of what's going on. Pay attention to anything that comes from y'all. You get the newsletters, emails. Read those. I think those are real informative. If there's no other agenda items, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second motion.
Okay, move and second to adjourn. All in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign. 7-0. Thank you so much.